This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd Neiman.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd Neiman here again today. Another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Today's episode, I'm going to cover another case study. This one I hold dear and near to my heart. A lot of fun, a lot of work. It's here in the Kansas City Metro where I live, so I've been on site on this property probably 100 times in the last 2.5 years since we bought it. It's been almost 3 years, I guess, by the time of this recording. Fun deal. Learned a little bit of everything. You're going to hear lessons learned. I mean, some of the regular blocking and tackling, increase rent, cut expenses, infill homes, turnover park-owned homes, renovate park-owned homes, sub-meter water sewer, add amenities, general park cleanup, painting program, beautification program. A number of the things you've heard me talk about before. A lot of that stuff is kind of the blocking and tackling. A couple things that set this apart was really how I found it, how I funded it, how I decided to keep it, some zoning stuff that was really kind of next level, if you will, and really helped me a lot. And then just a bunch of work, a bunch of effort, and it ended up being pretty fruitful. So this deal, it's plus or minus 100 pads, and I say plus or minus because when I first bought it, I thought it was 92 pads plus a site-built house, so 93. I think now the municipality and I agree it's 100 pads. At the time, the seller told me it was 117 pads, but they kind of goofed. The seller, I bought this park in December of 2018 for $1.3 million. And really $1.25 million because I ended up getting a seller paid credit of $50K. And going the route of the seller paid credit is better than a price reduction because in this case I had an 80% loan, and I got 80% of $1.3 million, which I believe was $1040 if my memory serves. Let me do the math here. $1040, $1,040. So I got a $1,040 loan. Oh, and by the way, I got $50,000 cash at closing, which really helped fund some of my capex, as opposed to if I got $1,250,000. He took the $50,000 in a price reduction times an 80% loan. It was $1 million. So a $40,000 additional cash saving. And this deal I syndicated. So that was basically, the minimum was $50K. So that was basically one less investor I need to split the pie with. When I was first looking at syndication, I'm going to get on a tangent here because that's kind of how this episode is going to go because there's just so much to cover, and I'm going to try to knock it out in a half an hour or so, but we'll see. When I first started looking at syndication years ago, I felt like there wasn't that much out there as far as transparent information and realistic information. So I'll be fairly transparent on this and some of my subsequent case studies. My split was 35%, 35-65 GPLP. At the time, I think the norm was anywhere from 20 to 30, occasional 35. Sometimes you'll see guys do 50-50, but they won't pay a pref. In this case, in order to get this deal funded, I paid a 10 pref. That's a 10% preferred return to my investors. I raised $750,000. I took a $100,000 commission, and I get another $100,000 commission, if and when I return the capital to my limited partners. So $100,000 wasn't bad, but I told the investors, look, you don't want me out there mowing grass on weekends or practicing law on weekends. You want me out here working on this deal. So I said I'm going to really focus some energy on this deal, and I didn't practice law for the entire first year. I didn't bill an hour. I probably billed like $1,500 something for like quasi friends, but realistically, I didn't really practice law at all. I said I'm going to focus on this deal because if I can make this deal work, I'm going to learn everything there is to know about the business from a ground level. But I'm also going to probably make $1 million, which is more than I would make practicing law, so by a considerable margin. So I thought, well, let's give it a go. So got it tied up. Okay, I'm going to go back and forth here. But how did I get it tied up? Well, I used to do real estate development, retail development, and I still own part of a grocery store in this town. I was part of the redevelopment of a grocery store. We were doing some pad sites. I thought we had Chase Bank, thought we had Cheddar's, some other restaurant pads on this one project. But Ended up, my business partner, who was cantankerous of a man, that's the nicest thing I'll say about him, ended up getting sideways with the city. So we ended up not getting our tax incentives, didn't get the deal done. I had previously done some retail leasing and legal work on some big power centers, shopping centers. My old partner had done hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate development in this town, and I was involved in much of it. So really got to know the city. Well, prior to being on the private side of development, I worked at a law firm here in Kansas City. We were kind of a boutique law firm, did high-end commercial real estate projects, including tax incentives, land use development, zoning, those sort of matters. We mostly represented developers, but we represented a few cities. We happen to represent this city. And I was outside counsel assigned to the city on tax incentive matters. So I really got to know the economic development department, the city manager, the mayor, some of the other public works, planning, zoning departments. Got to know them all. And then I went on private and worked on the kind of on the other side, but worked pretty well, pretty collaboratively with this community. Well, I was doing retail, and this plot of ground came for sale, and this municipality hated trailer parks. The mayor told me as such. He drove me around in the Suburban and showed me all the other trailer parks in town and all the vacancy and all the crap. And the reason he showed me this is because the economic development director called me and said, hey, Ferd, would you guys like to build high-end apartments or senior housing? And I said, where? And they said, this location. And I said, it doesn't make sense, this location. They said, why not? I said, because you've got green grass, virgin dirt with visibility in the interstate, half a mile away, and it's selling for $1.50, $2 a foot. I said, that means this site's worth about $900,000. If it was that dirt, but it wasn't that dirt. This is an inferior location with a bunch of people in the way and infrastructure in the way. So if you want me to buy this ground, clear out a bunch of low-income people, trash their trailers, rip up the infrastructure to then have virgin dirt in an inferior location, I'm going to have to buy it for considerably less than $900,000. And that's if I even want to be on Channel 9 as being the bad guy that does that, which I don't. So I said, it's not going to happen. I said, as a trailer park, I'd pay more than $900,000 and so would the market. And they said, how do you know that? I said, because I own trailer parks on the side. As I like to call them, mobile home parks or manufactured housing communities. And their hearts kind of sunk. We thought you were going to be our kind of escape route on this park because the seller has told us this thing is a nightmare. We have just about $3 million cash in this deal. They bought it for like $1 million. They put $2 million cash. They had no debt. It was a rich surgeon out of Chicago and a kind of a businessman, philanthropist out of Sacramento. And they had no debt on it, and they still had negative cash flow. So you want to look at cap rate? Well, what's my cap rate when I buy when my NOI is negative? Okay, and why was it negative? They had 11 personnel. Again, 93 pad trailer park. There were about 40 occupied sites. I say about because a couple of them, you count the vacant, you count the abandoned. There were 20 tenant-owned homes, and there were 20 park-owned homes. The park-owned homes had 3 or 4 that were occupied. There were also 2 homes that were abandoned that I had to get title to and demolish. So call it about 40, but paying tenants, we had about 22 occupied paying tenants and about 18 unoccupied non-paying tenants. And lot rent was $300, and that was gross. It included water sewer, but then it was kind of included water sewer because, well, they tried to bill back per human. Like, okay, $10 per human. Well, then you had some families with 3 generations there. They had 12 people living in a double wide. So are they really tracking that right? They weren't. They had another guy that had his kids on the weekends. He was getting pissed because he was getting billed for his kids, but he only lived there by himself 1 day a week and so on. So they kind of just quit billing by human. But then the landlord was eating it, so they said, well, let's bill by appliance. Okay, so if you have a washer dryer, it's $10. Well, guess what? People quit claiming they had a washer dryer, and they all would start doing laundry at the other person's house, those sort of things. So it was a bad system, tons of leakage. The park manager was local. She was being paid $80,000 a year to run 22 tenants, and she was not good at it. And she refused to work on site because she didn't think it was safe. She happened to have 5 maintenance personnel, an executive assistant, a property manager, a head of property management, 2 salespeople, and a bookkeeper. And over $200,000 of payroll, which is why they had negative NOI and they had negative cash flow despite having 0 debt service. She also put in place vendor contracts like high-end security cameras, which, by the way, didn't work because there wasn't Wi-Fi throughout the park. The park's like 10 acres. So that didn't really work. So one lesson learned is in the contract. Luckily, my contract, you say luckily, I think it was being rather astute, or one would say, my wife would say, paranoid. But my contract says the seller shall terminate all vendor contracts and personnel contracts immediately prior to closing, which worked out really well in this instance because the security contract was over $1,000 a month. It had a 10-year termination provision, which they tried to stick me with. And I said, I never signed that contract. I'm not buying that. In fact, the seller was required to cancel that immediately prior to closing. So, sorry, go away. Then, the manager, who I decided not to retain, I had made this decision, but I had not given her notification of this yet, nor the residents, because at the time her father was sick and dying. And I was like, it was around the holidays. We closed December 12/21/18. So I was like, I was making this decision around Thanksgiving. I was like, I don't really feel like firing this lady around Thanksgiving and Christmas while her dad's dying. So I was kind of still evaluating my timing and to some degree giving her one final chance, and I was going to potentially offer her considerably less of a compensation package. But I was like, nah, I didn't want to do that. Over time, she proved to be just not the right person. Lucky for me, she sent out a letter to the tenants saying, basically, dear tenants, we're selling the park. I know I've been God's gift to you, and you'll try to move on. She seriously said stuff like this. I know you'll try to move on, but for me, this place would have been miserable, and I did everything I could to make it an enjoyable place, and I know you guys appreciate me so much, and I'm just going to leave. I'm going to spend time with my dying father. Well, luckily, I got a copy of that letter after I bought it, but the letter was dated like December 1. And right around that time, she told me she was going to leave. I was like, okay, great. Well, post-closing, I get a letter from the Missouri Department of Unemployment saying she filed for unemployment. And I said, you don't get unemployment if you quit. They go, well, she says you fired her. I said, really? Well, here's the contract that says the seller had to fire her. And here's a copy of a letter that she sent out 3 weeks before I bought the park. How did I fire her at that time? And it was dismissed. And I got out of paying unemployment on this person. So that worked out. So strong contract. That's one of the lessons learned, right? Another lesson learned. You don't need 11 people on payroll to run this park. Okay, how I found it. Lesson learned, be lucky, right? I mean, to be honest, that's part of it. The city called me. I ended up bidding against a couple other guys. I convinced them, and I bonded with the guy. And he happened to be a Christian ministry guy. I'm a Christian. We went and met for 3 or 4 hours. We talked about trailer parks for half an hour and about religion for 2 or 3 hours. And it was genuine. And I happen to know a couple of verses of the Bible and Revelations that, as a Catholic, he was surprised that I knew, right? Catholics have a bad reputation for not knowing the Bible relative to Protestants. In this case, hey, it worked out okay. No disrespect to my brethren of other religions, but in this case, I built rapport based on just being me, right? And him being him. And he took my offer. He never even countered it, to be honest. He just said, that seems like a fair offer. And these guys were bleeding. They wanted out. Here was the catch. The seller, the big seller, who was not the guy I bonded with, the main seller, he was a surgeon that owned like an urgent care facility and like a brand. He had I think it was 38 of them. And he sold them to a big national outfit. And he made tens of millions of dollars. And it was in 2018, and he was going to take a big tax hit. And he knew he had a big loss on the trailer park, so he said, if you got to close by New Year's Eve. And if you can't get a loan that fast, at about 40 days. If you can't get a loan that fast, then I'll sell or finance it. But the catch was he wanted to do a 10-year amortization. He wanted 40% down and 6% interest, which at the time was about market interest rate. So that's a lot of money. Oh, and it needed significant CapEx. So some of the CapEx stuff that I ended up doing, new signage, repaved the streets, sub-meter to water sewer. We got rid of the dumpster and added polycard. That wasn't really CapEx. We added rose bushes, added white picket fences, new street signage. We painted all 40 houses, demolished a couple. We put in a playground and a dog park. Later in life, we put in a second dog park. A second playground, a bigger kind of commercial playground, because we had so many kids move in. They were beating up the first kind of backyard playground. We upgraded the storm shelter to make it more of like a community center, which was kind of on and off, to be honest, because kids would get in there and, draw, body parts on the wall and stuff like that. And so we ended up closing it off. We upgraded the office a little bit. And in general, the rest was just infill. And we infilled just over 50 homes. 5 or 6 of those were used homes. Most of them were new. Got our retailer's license. Did HUD sets. This is Missouri. Missouri's a HUD state. So I got real familiar with that, and we laid driveways and put in decks. Another lesson learned. We put in big decks, minimum 8x8. The competition was putting in 4x4. Couple lessons learned that helped us kick the competition's butt. When I say the competition, I mean 3 of the 5 largest mobile home park owners in the country were within 2 miles of us, and 2 of them were like 500 yards away. And we just crushed them. And we crushed them for a couple main reasons. 1, we put in better decks. 2, our lot rent was cheaper. We were at 300. We immediately went to 350. We sub-metered. On the 1-year anniversary, went to 375. On the 2-year anniversary, went to 400. We refinanced with Fannie Mae immediately after the 2-year anniversary hit. They generally want 90% occupancy for 90 days, and they want park-owned homes, which include any homes you sell on rent-to-own or contract for deed. That ratio needs to be below 35%. So as I was infilling, I was constantly looking at renters versus tenant-owned homes. And I'd put renters in there and do rent credits to try to convert them. And we'd even give them a rent credit for a portion of their down payment to get them financed with 21st Mortgage or Triad. So we used a lot of those strategies. There's one lesson learned, cheaper rent. Another lesson learned, better decks. Another lesson learned, work harder, work overtime. COVID hit in the middle of this. Everybody else was hiding behind their bunny slippers in Biden's basement, and they weren't selling homes. We worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7, for 18 months, and we sold, counting the renovations, we sold about 70 houses in 18 months. And I'm talking a competitive market right there. And it worked out. But the number one reason that we beat the competition, it's probably because I used to work at a zoning law firm, and my mentor, Mike White, was just world class. And I probably know 5. Sometimes I think on a good day 10% as much as he knows on zoning. But realistically, that puts me ahead of a lot of other people, especially in this asset class where legal services, as I know from experience now, are rarely had and rarely paid for. Well, I happen to have some of these legal services, legal skills. And I looked at the city code, and I read it. And I read the things that were grandfathered, and I read the things that were part of development or redevelopment. And I knew what applied, and I knew what didn't. And I read the business license stuff. I knew what applied and knew what didn't. And I sat down with the city, and they said, we need you to do this, 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 this. And I said, okay, show me in the code where I must do that. And the fire chief was there, and he goes, well, you don't really have to. I just would like it. And which goes back to my expansion lot, the 117 pads. The last guys, I saw the receipts. They paid $474,000 for fire hydrants, upgraded electric, upgraded water sewer on the expansion area of 2 acres where they were going to put in a bunch of homes. And the city told them you need these fire hydrants. I said, where's that in the code? And the guy said, well, I was going to hold up their business license. I said, the business license is $100. You can get it for being a hairstylist out of your mom's basement. You can't hold up a business license over fire hydrants. He goes, well, you're probably right. But I got myself 2 fire hydrants. So he really stuck it to him. On the expansion, these guys goofed, and you did need mobile home permits or occupancy permits in order to infill lots. It's $60. It's pretty much rubber stamp if the lots are legitimate. These guys put in the infrastructure. They even hired the utility provider to put in the 200 amp electric. They upgraded it. And they put these pads real close together. And somebody from planning came by one day and said, what you guys doing? And they go, oh, we're putting in RVs. They said, RVs aren't allowed in this town. And the one owner, I heard the story secondhand, one owner looks at the other guy and said, you got the permits, right? And he said, I thought you were getting the permits. And there went $500,000 right down the toilet. So, lesson learned, read the code. Here's where the code benefited me. The code said we require 1 deck and recommend if you put a second deck that the second deck they're both at least 4x4. So the other parks, including these top operators, put 2 4x4 decks on. 4x4 deck in this market costs about $1,000 installed. An 8x8 deck costs about $1,500 installed. And you can get a set of steps from Royal Supply for $225. You can get them installed for another $30. So what they were doing was putting in 2 crappy decks. You couldn't put a chair on them. You couldn't put a table on them. You could barely get in with your couch. Where I was putting in one legit deck, 8x8. On my double wides, I put in more, 10x20 or 8x16, depending on the layout. And I put a set of steps in the back, so I was actually coming in cheaper than the competition with a superior deck product. Other things we did, we figured out what had to be done by a pro, what could be done in-house. In this town, you had to have a licensed installer sign off on the HUD set, but you didn't have to have a licensed electrician. So I had a guy on my payroll, or a couple guys on my payroll, that we taught to do 200 amp electric. They dig the trench, run the conduit, put the Sweetbriar, that's the three-prong wire they run in there, and the ground rods in, and they'd run it underneath the home, and they'd hook it up, and the inspector, and the home installer, and the inspector would say, looks good to me, and we were paying, I don't know, $15 to $20 an hour for 4 to 6 hours, instead of an electrician may charge you $300 to $600. So we were saving lots of money on that. But back to my point of the code, the deck was important, the electric was important, but the key was the setbacks. The code says 20-foot setbacks, perimeter setbacks, 10-foot internal, which is 10 foot was the fire code in Missouri, so we had to follow the fire code because fire code impacts the public health, safety, welfare, and morals, which trumps grandfathering, just like nuisance, just like abandonment. One of the three things that trump grandfathering. I was grandfathered in. My park was from the 1960s. It predated the code of 2009. I drafted a zoning letter. I take some pride in this. It's one of the only legal documents anybody ever really creates from scratch. I mean, at least for me. Most time, you get a lease, it starts as a template. You got a contract, it starts as a template. Some super lawyer in the basement of New York City spent 20 years drafting a template. And everybody else has been, stealing it and modifying it with experience, with skills, but modifying it over the years and years and years. Well, the zoning letter I just kind of came up with. And I said, what do I want? And I want to know the vacant lot. Can I use it or not? Can I bring a new home or a used home? Can I bring it any size? Can I put it wherever I want? If there is a home there, can I refill it? Can I refill it with used? Can I refill it with new? Can I refill it if the house burns down? What if the house moves away? A single wide, a double wide, what's the size? What's the age? And so on. And I was able to prove that portions of the code were not applicable to me based on when they came into fruition and my grandfathered rights. And I had paid for a nice Table A Alta survey on this property. Actually, I got the seller to pay for it, but it was like $14,000. So it was extremely detailed. And I got the city planning director to sign off saying that I had 0 setback lines, despite the code saying 20. I brought in over 50 homes, and I kid you not, I put them 1 inch from the property line, which, lucky for me, was 76 feet. Now, some of them were like 75 feet, so I stuck that home out into the internal street. I got a couple homes sticking in the street. But the difference between a 1676, or as we say, a 1680, when you count the 4-foot hitch. By the way, I cut off all the hitches as part of my painting program. They look like heck. They look like trailer parks instead of manufactured housing. Plus, Fannie Mae really requires it. I put in 76-foot homes. A 1676 is 1,216 feet. A 1666 is 1,056 feet. That 160 feet, that's a 10 by 16 bedroom. That's another bedroom. You go drive the other parks, and I've taken every one of my employees by these parks, and I tell them the story, and I say, look at that right there. That's the best operator in the country, supposedly. And look what they got behind their home. They got 20 feet of grass, baby. And they're selling 48, 46-footers, 56-footers, 66-footers. So look what I got. I got a 1680, and it's got 3 beds, 2 baths, and I can sell them in my sleep. And my entire perimeter, I put those homes in. And I was selling them. One of the main operators, I was doing my due diligence, 115 pads, 500 feet down the street. They had 15 vacant. I mean, they're a major operator. They were, I think, number 4 or 5 in the country at that time. I said, man, they're going to be a stiff competition. They get the same quality park. The other 2 bigger operators had better parks, basketball court, pools, clubhouse. They're not really the same animal. They were higher rent. This guy had a similar rent, similar quality park. And I go, he's got 15 vacant. I got to bring about 50. We'll be pretty competitive for the first 15, but after that, if he's full, well, then he's full. And I don't have much competition. I kid you not, the week of closing, he demoed 60 houses. They demoed 60 houses. It took them like 2 weeks. And they knocked out a ton of trees, and they said, we're starting over. And they brought in 15 home spec. I didn't have that kind of chutzpah to bring 15 home spec. I brought in 6 home spec from 6 different manufacturers, different quality points. And I had a couple, my internal lots I couldn't fit a 76, so I brought in a double, and I brought in a 16 by 66, and I brought a 14 by 66, and which I'll never do again. That little cracker box did not sell well. And I was like, holy cow, I got a lot of competition. But they brought in 66-footers, and they brought in all singles. I brought in doubles. I brought in the Trues. I brought in the Claytons. I brought in Adventure. I brought in Champion, and we had a different price point. And then there's lots of different Claytons, by the way. I brought in the Clayton Independent out of Waco. I brought in the Clayton Pulse out of Wakarusa. I brought in the Redmond Advantage from Champion, and I brought in the Commonwealth and the Dutch Edge. So different plants, different styles, different bed bath counts, different layouts. I brought in every true home they made, just about. Those really worked out pretty well, despite a lot of people give them a bad rap. But I sold 20 true in this park, so it worked out really well. So by bringing in those bigger homes, I was able to offer a much bigger, better housing product, and for nearly the same price. And by the time I had savings on doing my own electric, my own deck, my own driveways, my own skirting in-house, I had a lower cost than the big boys on their 66-foot homes, not a 76-foot home. So that was key. I call it my $1 million zoning change, because that's how much the difference it made, was $1 million. Other things we did, we switched the trash to polycart, which kept from beating up our roads with the dumpster. We were able to bill that back to the residents. Actually, no, this park we actually still paid it on time. I think we had a restriction on that, so we still pay it ourselves. Second lot from the corner. I had entire streets. I'm looking at my map right now. I got 10 homes on a street. Entire street's vacant. So I had to fill them, right? So rather than fill the corner lot, what I strategically did, I filled the second lot from the corner. I never told anybody that I was never going to fill the corner lot, but they thought, ooh, there's nobody in front of me. I got a big yard. I got the corner lot, even though there was clearly another room for another home right there. And I'd sold those first. And it ended up being pretty genius, because then I sold those lots, and then people thought I had a corner lot. 6 months, and strategically I wouldn't fill the next lot right away, because it pissed people off. But I'd wait and fill some other ones, and then I'd later fill it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months later. And the person would be like, wait a second, I thought I was in the corner. It's like, why do you think you're in the corner? There's clearly a pedestal there, a sewer hookup. Like, they go, yeah, we just thought it would take forever, because, this place has been vacant for years. I say, well, sorry. Yeah, not really sorry, not sorry. But then the next person, it was a legit corner lot, and they knew it. And I would strategically put double wides in the corners with big decks. I'd use some cherry wood instead of just a regular treated pine, and it looked really good. And then it was easy to sell those lots, because they were legit corner lots. So that was another thing that we did that really worked out. Sub-metering made sense. We enforced a bunch of rules. We bought the abandoned homes. Rather than go through the Abandoned Title Act, which is a huge pain, slow and expensive, we would just find these people on Facebook or find them somehow, and we'd say, look, I'm not trying to chase you down, but I could chase you down for lot rent, and I could garnish your tax return, I could garnish your income, I could sue you, some of the stuff which was a bluff. But tell you what, give me the title, I'll give you a $100 bill. And they thought I was trying to serve them or something. So I said, look, meet me in Panera. When I go to the park, I go on Tuesdays, I wear a white shirt and a black ball cap. I'm going to be a guy sitting there looking like that at Panera with a $100 bill on the table. Bring the title and take the $100 bill. And you can see that I'm there. I had Bible study there at 6 a.m. So I'm like, I'm there at 6 a.m. You show up at anytime after 7. I'm going to be the only guy sitting there. That you'll see there's no police or somebody to serve you with a subpoena. Just show up. And it worked. And I got a couple abandoned homes like that, which saved me some money. Other things I do is I tow cars. And people have abandoned cars, or people are, have 6 cars that are being a huge pain. I start towing cars, they start falling in line. Other upgrades we would do, we'd add laminate flooring. The factory comes with either carpet or vinyl. On the remodels, we would use laminate, which is kind of a nice little upgrade. People really liked it. I got different models, things like that. I put in 56 rose bushes in this park, so that was really nice. Actually, I put in more than that. I had 56 living rose bushes. I probably put in the 65, but we had really bad clay and soil and gravel, so they didn't last that long. We spent close to $100,000 on road remodel. That's where some of that CapEx came in. I said we raised $750. That was down payment, CapEx, sub-meters. And we didn't do the Metron now has this monthly fee where you can rent them. We paid cash, and then we installed them ourselves. So that costs $43,000 to do this many pads. And I was talking earlier. We also, I'm looking here. We also hired police. We had a couple people who were drug dealers. Somebody was, we think, had a prostitution house. We just would rent a cops, actually real cops. So we would put them in front of the house and pay them hourly, and just in uniform, in squad car, and just say, just park there. Figured if this guy's dealing drugs, and you're a drug user, you're gonna probably find someplace else to buy your drugs because the cops are clearly onto this house. He's either in on it or the cops are going to sting him. So go elsewhere. Eventually the guy's going to leave and you're putting him out of business. So that worked out fairly well. So back to the economics to bring this full circle. I tied this deal up. Like I said, $1.3 million. I needed $750 to get the deal done for all these different costs. I didn't have $750 just laying around, and I didn't have much time. And I didn't have a bank approval. And this deal was very low occupancy. I mean, tried to give them the bank. There's no good historical financials. The deal has negative NOI. Park just looks like it sucks. It looks like a ghost town. There were potholes that were, in some places, 10 to 12 inches deep. I had to mill it all out and grind it out and relay road base. I didn't do all this. I'm hired guys. I don't know how to do that stuff. Relay to asphalt, seal coat, the whole 9 yards. And I'd never tackled a deal of this size. So, this magnitude. I was doing other deals for the previous 4 or 5 years, but they were on the side. They were smaller deals, one at a time. I also had another big project just like this going on in Illinois. So, I had a couple $100,000, $300,000 of my money in that deal. So, I was not as liquid on this as I'd like, and I had recently just left the real estate development firm. So, I didn't have a regular day job, if you will. And I went to the banks. And the first several banks just told me, no way. We don't do trailer parks. Some of them said, we'll do it, but we want 40% down, 50% down. I go, look, guys, if I need 50% down, I might as well go with the seller. He's got seller finance. I don't have to go through the hurdles and all this other kind of stuff. Right? So I said, look, I need at least 70% down, 70% leverage, 30% down. And nobody was giving me a yes. So I was like, okay, keep going. Well, finally I met this one bank in Kansas City Market, and I did some retail with these guys, and I was working on a big $50 million retail development. And they were going to make us an $11 million land loan. And land loans are kind of risky. Now, we had tenants lined up, national tenant stuff, but a land loan means these guys are willing to take some chances. So I figured maybe they'd take a trailer park loan. And I talked to this guy, Keith, and I called him. I said, Keith, I'm looking for a loan. I'm looking for at least 70% LTV. He said, Ferd, the richest guys ever lent money to are trailer parkers. I'll give you 80. First 10 seconds. I was like, what? And I said, did I just get loan approval? He goes, well, I got to go through the process. Actually, it's under $2 million, so I have signature approval. He was the regional president. So he goes, yeah, you got yourself a loan. I was like, holy cow. So now I had a loan. So now I had, some bait to go fishing with. So I went back to the investors, and I had all kinds of people say I'm in. Friends and family. I didn't have any real network, and I didn't know much back then about PPMs and SEC requirements. So I wasn't marketing. I was doing friends and family. And my friends and family weren't that rich, right? So I didn't have, nobody was writing me big checks. It's in 25s, 50,000s, a couple guys at 100,000. And it came closer and closer to time to write those checks. And I gathered, and some of them told me, hey, I'm out. So I went to a couple private equity groups, which I really didn't want to do. I really didn't want to boss. And one of them wanted me to do I ended up getting 3 guys interested, and one of them bailed because my deal was too lucrative. And it was going to piss off, they were senior housing developers, going to piss off their investors. And the way that they pitched this, at least the way they pitched it to me, was, hey, we can't do this anymore because you're showing too high of a return. And if we show our investors this, they're going to, like you do better than ours, they're going to start looking elsewhere for the senior housing and for multifamily and all that. So they said, we can't do it. And I really had to dumb down my pro forma because nobody believed I could pull this off. So I was showing, get these assumptions compared to the syndicators you see today. I was showing a 4-year infill, which I thought was reasonable. And then I was showing a 9% refinance cap rate. And I was showing a 9% disposition cap rate in year 10. I took no asset management fee. I took a 5% property management fee. And I was also showing almost no park-owned home income. I was saying, look, I'm going to sell these off. I'm going to sell them at cost. I'm going to dump them. No expenses. So I wasn't showing any of that extra income. And with that, net of my fees, I was showing a 35% IRR. And people were like, no way. I knew if I showed more aggressive assumptions, like a 5 cap or 6 cap or 7 cap on the refire the exit, or a 2-year infill instead of 4, which is what actually happened here, then the yield would be too high, and nobody would believe me. So I started getting these guys involved. I got down to 2 private equity groups, and one of them told me, they want you to do the pref hurdle method. So 10 pref, 35-65 GPLP. And those weren't the original terms, but that's what we agreed on. And that's the group I eventually went with. Another group wanted me to get 20, but I was going to get 20 right out of the gate. And I was going to cap at 20. I've since learned, in all my subsequent syndications, I've learned there should be a second or third hurdle. Such as, okay, 10 pref, 35 for me, 65 for you guys. But if I hit an IRR of, say, 15, well, my share goes to 50 or 60 or 70. If I hit an IRR of 20, it goes to 80 or 90 or 95. One deal I even put a cap in. People didn't really like that. I had a couple family offices slap me for it. But we got the deal funded. And in some respects, I feel like I'm kind of trend-setting the industry. And I made some good money on this deal, but I made a lot of other people really rich. And they deserve it, and I'm not that bitter because they backed me when nobody else wanted to back me. But at this point, I don't want to make them that rich again. It's like, come on, guys, you don't need to make this kind of yield. So, and I'll get to the numbers here at the end of the movie. But I was having trouble raising the money. So I thought, man, I don't want to let this deal go. So I called one of the top 5 operators in the country. Everybody knows who he is. And I said, hey, and I knew him previously. And I said, I got this deal. Are you interested? And he happened to own one of the parks on the same street. And he said, we love the market. We're interested. Call my business partner. He does all the underwriting. So I called the business partner. And he says, we're interested. I need this. And I had already been running this deal like I was going to close this. I already had an A-plus zoning letter. I already had a survey. I already had a clean phase 1. I already had market comps. I already had park-owned home inspections. I already had whatever other due diligence stuff. Oh, bids for the roads, bid for tree repair. We paid $37,000 for tree removal. This place was like the hidden garden, right? So it was really buttoned up. So they were interested, and I sent them my contract. And the attorney said, your contract has problems. We need it on our contract because we have certain things we like. And I was like, what are you talking about? My contract's solid. Like, we bought, my business partner in particular bought hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in deals on this form contract, which I have now modified to be MHP specific. And I said, what's wrong? He goes, well, this. I go, those are in there. Things like, we need time for financing, we need zoning review. I go, I already got this stuff buttoned up, man. And he said, well, we can't do it. And I said, well, let me think about it. I go, I'm not going to, he goes, what we want you to do is introduce us to the seller. That's what he said. And we'll get this, we're real smooth. We'll tell the seller, hey, Ferd works with us. We need you to sign a different form contract. And the seller, like I said, was a rich guy that had this huge portfolio. So I was not dealing with some baby attorney here. I was dealing with a big-time Chicago law firm. Went back and forth. They were all over this. And if I introduce you to them, they're going to say, Ferd can't get it bought. Ferd doesn't have the money. And you're going to cut me out. I said, so no way. I said, take my contract assignment. And my contract says, Ferd, my company, Third Floor Properties, LLC, and or assigns. So I had the right to assign it, unfettered right. Didn't have to be a member, didn't have to be controlling member or manager. I had the right to assign it. But I had to close by New Year's Eve, which was, now we're looking at, it was probably December 1 at this point. It was getting down the wire. And I told the guy, attorney, this would have been a Thursday. He said, look, my boss is out of town. I said, I need to know by Monday at 8 a.m. or else I got to go another route. And they said, hey, there's none of interest. I said, what? And I think it was too small for them in hindsight. So I was like, okay, now what? So I went to talk to these investment funds, and I meet one of the guys on site on Saturday morning. He brings his kids and his wife, and we walk the park. And I talk pretty fast. You can probably tell through this podcast. And I know my numbers pretty well. And I had been talking to this deal with a bunch of people for a while and other deals, and I usually was 2 or 3 steps ahead of them. And it was really annoying, to be honest, because I was like, come on, keep up. And Paul kept up. And he said, you tell me they're not making any more of these? I said, I'm telling you, they're not making any more of these. Cities hate them. So he said, you're telling me you can finish this, you can do this? And I said, yeah. And this is like in 20 minutes. And he looked me in the eye and he said, as many as you can find. And he said, I'm in for $500,000. And he shook my hand. I was like, holy cow. And I was like super pumped. Well, I'm like, okay, with $500,000 in the bank, this deal's mine. I'm gonna fund it. And I had commitments. I was doing 2 deals at once. This deal in Illinois too, and I had like $2 million committed, but then they were dropping like flies. Everybody got cold feet, or they said my wife won't let me, my bunny slippers are hiding behind me, whatever their story was. So I knew I was gonna get this, so I ended up funding the other deal all by myself, or Dad too. And then on this deal, I was like, well, I'm gonna use investor capital, and I ended up putting $0 in this deal. So this, the little story here is how to turn a zero into $1 million, which is kind of cool. I recommend it. And Monday morning, the other attorney calls, the senior attorney. He says, Ferd, I was on vacation last week, and my baby lawyer didn't understand your contract. Your contract is fine. And in hindsight, I now know, I've read their contract like 10 times for clients. My contract is far superior in many respects. It's funny because I get paid about once a month to redline a new version of this inferior contract. So it's actually bittersweet. Not bittersweet, it's actually doubly sweet. It's probably a bad analogy. So anyway, the guy says, we want the deal. So what was my fee? The norm, quote norm at the time, was 5 to 10%. This deal was $1.3 million. So my fee should have been up to $130,000. Out of the gate, I said, I want $165 and not a penny less. And the guy said, we've never paid a fee that high. This is from the first junior lawyer. And I said, and the underwriting team. And I said, well, that's fine. I don't know if they're telling the truth or not. They said, we've never paid a fee that high. I said, well, you're going to have to. And the senior lawyer calls back and he said, we want the deal. We'll pay your fee. And I said, well, that deal expired 8 a.m. He said, oh, come on. It's noon. I was out of town. I said, no, I'm not just negotiating hard. I funded my deal. Paul gave me $500,000. I got enough money. And he said, I understand. He said, I know for this guy Paul, now you're gonna need a bigger fee. He said, I understand that number's probably gonna start with a 2. I'd like you to go back to Paul and see what the number is. Well, 3 days ago the 165 was just mine. There was no Paul. So now I got a split 2. It ain't that attractive. So I said, thanks but no thanks. And my dad gets some credit for that because it was pretty tempting. I was like, I've been working on this for like 3 weeks. Because I forgot to tell you, when I was working on earlier when the city called me, I was working with this other developer, and the city said, don't do it. And I had a bunch of commercial projects going at that time. So I passed on the trailer park because I didn't want to piss off the city. Because my partner said, don't piss off the city. So I didn't. Well, later when I quit working for him, because he stiffed me out of a bunch of money, I said, now I don't care. So now I went and bought the dang deal. I actually asked the mayor and the manager and the development director again, could I have permission? And they said, Ferd, we don't like trailer parks. We like you. I said, look, you're going to have another California, Chicago operator that's going to mismanage it, or you're going to have me. I'm at least here. You guys can call and yell at me and get me out here to fix something. And they said, you have permission to bid. And so that's what I did. But so I've only been working on this for like 3-4 weeks. And I'm like, I can make 6 figures in short order. So I'm like, man, maybe let's just take this. That'll give me nice seed money. I won't have to raise money as much on the next deal. And I left over $1 million on the table at the previous job, so it hurt. So my cash was tied up. I thought I had a big check coming. The guy just kept stiffing me, and it got too big. And I was like, I can't keep taking receivable. I need my money, so I bailed on that job, despite actually doing a really good job, in my opinion. So my dad said, dude, you got to get this deal bought. Go buy it. So I did, and got it bought. We closed on it. Less than 24 months later, we filled it, and it just appraised at $6.2 million. And I got a 65 LTV with 3 years interest only, 30-year ammo, 10-year fixed rate from Fannie Mae, non-recourse, and I pulled out over $3 million on one park with 0 down in less than 24 months in the Lion's Den with all these big dogs. And that's why I'm kind of anti-wholesale, because I'm like, man, I could have made a one-time check. It'd been a nice shot in the arm. That would have paid my bills for a year or two. But instead, I just worked harder. I learned all kinds of stuff. And I just put my kids in private school until they graduate high school on one deal. So, God is good. Trailer park business is fun. Till next time, stay safe, have fun. God bless.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.